So, my 35th birthday is coming up in less than 10 days. And having lived through the first half of my 30s now, it had me thinking a lot about my 20s, right? Not in like a dramatic my life is over kind of way or anything like that, but in a real, reflective kind of way. In an in a man, I wish I had known some things that I know now back in my 20s kind of way, right? So if you're in your 20s right now, this isn't a video for me like judging you. This is me talking to my younger self and hoping you get something out of it. So in my 20s, I definitely thought I had, you know, unlimited time, we'll say. I knew at that point in my life I had a lot of life ahead of me still. I was still a very young man. Because in your 20s, you're still young, okay? I mean, I understand age is kind of a subjective thing, but ultimately, for most people, we'll say 85% of people in their 20s, yeah, you still have a lot of life ahead of you. You still have a whole lot of free time, relatively speaking, compared to somebody that's in their early 30s, compared to when you're in your early 20s. It's subjective, but for the most part, that's generally true. Right? In your 20s, you still have time to figure things out. You have time to make and fix your mistakes. You have time to put off being serious about life till later, right? And technically, you know, definitely in my 20s, yeah, I did have all that for sure. But what I didn't understand fully in my 20s was that time is not something that passes you by. It's something that compounds in on itself, right? Habits compound, your skills compound, the money you make compounds, your health decisions compound, right? Everything that you do in your 20s is setting up your 30s and 40s, okay? That's something I really wish I had known in my 20s, is that the decisions that I was making at 21, 22, if I could go back now knowing the things that I know now at 35 to being 21 again, it would be a whole nother ballgame for my life. Whole nother ballgame, right? Bad decisions compound on themselves. So if you're thinking when you're, 21, 22, or even say you're 25 maybe, if you're thinking to yourself that you still have plenty of time to waste, you really don't, okay? Wasting my 20s is one of the biggest things in life that has truly held me back from being fulfilled and being happy. Um, Now, I'm also very fortunate that I am in a position to where I can salvage things and still have a great life for myself. I do have a good life for myself, but my life could be substantially better from a financial perspective and a freedom perspective and just an overall wellness perspective if I'd made better decisions in my early 20s and then not only made better decisions, but been consistent and committed to those decisions, right? A lot of times, it is true that you do have time in your 20s to figure things out, right? Like I said, you have time to figure it out. You have time to make and fix your mistakes. But the thing about your 20s is if you really want to set yourself up for some serious momentum in your 30s, and then by the time you turn 40, you really have, quote, everything figured out and you have a good life and you're established and you've got all the things that society tells you should want, or just that you want for yourself, whether that's a family or a home or a sound retirement plan or, whatever success looks like for you, right? You need to be cultivating that in your 20s, right? And now I hear a lot of people say that, you should just work yourself to death in your 20s, like get two jobs and do all these things. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think you should burn yourself out at both ends and then end up grinding yourself into the ground so you're, that's all you do in your 20s. But I definitely think that you do need to at least begin getting serious about something in your 20s, okay? Getting serious in your 20s will make such a big difference in your 30s, because again, the habits that you form in your 20s, the skills that you cultivate in your 20s, the money you invest in your 20s, the decisions you make that form the basis of your health in your 20s, right? A lot of people take their health for granted in their 20s and then they pay for it tenfold in their 30s, right? Those decisions compound on each other. Those decisions are setting the foundation for what your life is going to look like in 10 years, 5 years, okay? When you waste 5 years drifting in your 20s, you're not just losing those 5 years, you're losing all the momentum that you could have built into the future. And instead of 5 years down the road, you've got something started and you're gaining seniority in something, or you're gaining knowledge in something, and you're instead beginning that process at 5 years. Time is really the key component to successful investing, right? Compound interest, right? Compound interest is not just applied to money in your bank account or in your 401k. Compound interest is applied to your habits, your skills, your health, your money, your well-being. Really, every aspect of your life is going to be affected by time compounding on itself and consistency. So if you waste those 5 years in your 20s, if you waste your entire decades of your 20s, basically like I did. I didn't really get serious about something until I was roughly 27, okay? That was so much wasted time. And that's not to say that I didn't accomplish anything in my 20s, but I focused on the wrong things, right? I tell you, when I was in my 20s, one thing that was really important to me was trying to be in a band, right? I played music, I played drums, and I was really good too. It wasn't even a skill thing. It was more that those opportunities weren't really realistic for me given the opportunities that are available to me and were available to me in my 20s. I mean, sure, I could have went, to music school. I could have done whatever, but it was a long shot. And I'm not sitting here telling you don't pursue something that's important to you while you have the time to do it, which is in your 20s. But I am telling you that you need to go into that. Like, if you're 21 right now and let's say you're an accomplished musician like I was at 21, 22, in terms of your skill and your education on that instrument, if you really have the chops for it and you really want to pursue that, then by all means pursue it, but that you understand the risk of pursuing that, right? If you make the mistake of giving up, say, 6 years into it, and you start at 20 and you put everything, all your energy, all your resources, all your time into pursuing that thing, say till you're 26, 27, and then you decide that's not right for you, well, then that's all wasted time. Okay, then you're starting over at 27 rather than starting at 21. And that's 6 years gone. 6 years of momentum wasted. 6 years of compounding for nothing, right? And then you're having to start over. That's not to say you can't start over at that time in your life, but I'm saying that the longer you wait to commit to something and to get serious about it, the longer you're going to have to wait for that compounding interest effect to gain you the momentum you need to be successful and get the things you want in life at the right times in life, right? Right? So you need to understand that. Okay, the next thing you need to understand is don't underestimate discipline. Okay, in my 20s, I was chasing motivation. I wanted to feel ready for something. I wanted to be inspired, right? But here's the dirty secret, right? The people who are building the real life for themselves in their 20s, that are going to be the successful adults in their 30s, they're not waiting around to be inspired in every moment. They're not waiting for that perfect moment to give them permission to start living their lives. They were the boring people. They were consistent and they were disciplined, right? And discipline in your 20s looks kind of unimpressive to a lot of people until those next 10 years goes by, and then it looks a lot like success. Okay? When you're in your 20s, the 10 years of your 20s where you're the guy that's not going socializing, yeah, it's going to be a boring decade for you. But if you put in the work now, by the time you're 35, by the time you're my age, you're gonna look pretty all right. You're gonna be the successful one, right? Right? Don't think short term in your 20s. That's when you need to get out of that short term mindset and start thinking long term. Okay? In your 20s, it's easy to focus on who you're dating, what people think about you, looking successful but not actually being successful, and quick money, right? That is one of the biggest things, is quick money, right? It's one thing in your 20s to take a job that you think pays you all right so you can get that money quickly. But even if you make money throughout your 20s, it's really more important that you're cultivating a skill in your 20s that will then make you more money in your 30s, because that's what's going to set you up for success. You know, in my 20s, I really wish I had focused more on building a valuable skill. That one in particular, I really wish I'd focused on getting serious about learning something, like learning to code really well, or learning a trade, or maybe even going back to school or something. Like, I really wish I had focused more on building a valuable skill set that would have paid me dividends for the rest of my life, instead of having to get serious about that stuff in my mid 30s, right? Where the next few years of my life are going to be spent cultivating a skill before I'm really getting the compounding effect of that momentum, which won't start for me roughly until I'm almost 40, right? So by that metric, I'm pretty far behind where I could have been if I had done these things in my 20s, right? I wish I had focused more on protecting my credit and taking care of my body and choosing my friends and social groups more wisely, right? The people that you spend time around, particularly in your 20s, that is a really good indicator of future success, right? Your social circle is a great indicator of future success. If you're surrounding yourself with people who lack ambition and who do drugs and who don't really have any kind of long-term goals in life, that's what you're going to mirror, right? And I can tell you, it is better to spend your time alone than it is to spend your time with people who are instilling bad habits in you and encouraging you to sabotage yourself and encouraging you to make poor choices. It's better to be alone, right? And that's not to say you should isolate yourself. I think a lot of people make that mistake too. That was certainly a mistake I made in my 20s, was isolation, because you will definitely pay for that in your 30s. But the friends that you do have need to be chosen wisely. You need to be selective about the people you let into your inner circle, because those people, they're going to influence you. They're going to feed off of you. They're going to instill habits in you, whether you're consciously aware of that or not. And the energy that those people put off into your life, you're going to absorb that, and you're going to be a reflection of that. So it's really important that you choose your friends and your associates wisely in your 20s, right? Even if they're just in the short term, you want good, healthy relationships. You don't want to be around the dregs of society. You don't want to be around the people that are encouraging you to make short-term decisions and be a short-term thinker, right? Another thing I wish I'd focused more on was picking a career path with intention, and picking a career path that I had aptitude for, and that there was actually a good job at the end of that, right? Because here's the truth, right? Your 30-year-old self's going to live with the decisions you made when you were 25. That's just the truth, right? And by the time you're 35, the decisions that you make in your 20s will follow you for the rest of your life. They will. Your 20s is such an important decade, and I feel like a lot of people waste their 20s and they choose not to get serious about their lives until they're 28 to 30. And by then, you've wasted so much time. You've lost so much momentum, so much ability to compound on your own habits and success, right? And not only just that, but when you're in your 20s, you still have that fire in you. You still have that internal, that motivation to really take a risk, and you still have the appetite for risk. When you turn 30, you're going to find yourself getting a lot more, risk adverse in most cases. You're going to find yourself looking for more stability, more guaranteed paths, because you may have gotten burned in your 20s, or you may have, had a bad experience or whatever. But your 20s is the time where you're going to allow yourself to take bigger risk. And those risks, even if they result in failures, will teach you so much about life, and will teach you what not to do, even if that's all you learn. It's just what you don't want to do, so you don't waste any more time, right? Take as many risks as you can in your 20s, but take the right risk. Don't take stupid, pointless risk where there's no return on investment, right? You should take risk in your 20s, but you should make sure they're calculated risk that actually have some reward, some tangible thing for you to gain, at the end of it, and that they don't put too much harm, or potential harm rather, to your well-being, right? Another thing about my 20s that I wish I could go back and know now, or go back and know then that I know now, is comparing yourself to other people's lives is a trap. Okay? Social media makes it a lot worse nowadays. In your 20s, everyone looks ahead of you, right? Someone's traveling, someone's getting married, someone's making six figures, someone's starting a business. But what you don't ever see about those people is their debt, their stress levels, the help they had from their families, the sacrifices they had to make, right? Comparing yourself to others will lead to insecurity, and it will lead to anxiety, and it will lead you to rush, right? I think there's an old saying that says, what is the old saying? That expedience is the death of the soul, right? I can't remember who said that, but that's a great saying because it's so true. Expedience is the death of the soul. And what that really means is that if you rush through things, because what's going to happen is if you waste your 20s, you're going to realize you wasted your 20s roughly between the ages of 28 and say 32, right? You're going to realize at that point that you wasted a lot of time, and that's going to cause you to have a lot of anxiety about your future because you're going to feel like you're behind, and well, you will be behind, right? And that anxiety is going to lead to insecurity, which is going to lead you to make poor decisions, to make hurried, rushed decisions because you're trying to make up for lost time, which is going to cause you to be stressed and unfocused, and it's going to cause you to fail. Okay? Your 20s is when you have 10 years ahead of you before you turn 30 and the real world really kicks in for you. And that's the time when you're not going to have all this anxiety and all this stress because you know there's time. And if you spend that time wisely, those dividends will pay you back tenfold by the time you're in your 30s. Okay, stalling's going to cost you years. Indecisiveness is going to cost you years. But what's going to cost you even more years is comparing yourself to other people who are on completely different trajectories than you and may not even really be living the life that they're projecting to you just for likes on social media. Stop worrying about comparison and start worrying about building momentum for yourself, all right? The clout will come if you make the right moves. Okay, but what you don't want is to waste time projecting a life you don't even actually have on social media. And what you do want is to get busy building the actual life that you want, and then having it for real in actuality. Okay, so all that to say that here's some good news, right? Turning 30 it's not a death sentence. It's going to give you clarity. At 30, you're going to know yourself better. You're going to know what doesn't work for you. You're going to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. You're going to know what you don't want out of life. And yes, you are going to feel some urgency, especially at that point. And that's something that can totally be avoided, is that urgency, right? Because if you've built enough momentum for yourself by the time you turn 30 by successfully navigating your 20s, then 30 can be the greatest decade of your life if you spend your 20s right. If you sacrifice time in your 20s to build something, 30 is when life really begins. 30 is when you're going to start seeing all the rewards of that sacrifice. But if you don't spend your 20s wisely and you waste a lot of your 20s like I did, 30 is going to be the toughest decade of your life, because 30 is when you're going to have to be building all the things you should have built in your 20s without 10 years of time ahead of you before turning 40, and without the drive and the ambition and the youth and the energy of a 20-year-old. Okay? It's a lot harder at 30. It's still definitely obtainable, but it's a lot harder. So spend your 20s wisely, right? Because while urgency is powerful, it also drains you, okay? You need to avoid that at all cost. Because at 30, the decisions you make, you don't have time like you did in your 20s to try something out, fail at it, and then start over again. You know, when you're 20, you can try something out for 2 years, see if it's for you, and if it's not for you, well, you're only 22. You've still got plenty of time, right? Try something else out. Try it out for another 2 years. Not for you, well, you're only 24. You still have time, okay? But by the time you're 28, yeah, you need to have some momentum built. You need to have 2 or 3 years of momentum in something, because you don't want to turn 30 and still not have a clue what you're trying to do with your life. You don't want to turn 30 and have no real consistent experience or no seniority, no credentials, no direction, right? Because it's not only about, again, not having the energy of youth in your 20s, but it's also about trying to sell yourself to other people at 30 with no real consistency built in your 20s, because at 30, people are going to be a lot less likely to take a risk on you versus when you're 22 and you're just starting out, because people are going to expect you not to have a lot of experience in your early 20s. They're going to expect you to just be fresh out of school, or they're going to expect you to not have it all together, and they'll take a risk on you because you're just getting started, and that's just how the game works. But when you're 30 to 35 even, yeah, people are going to look at you and say, well, why have you wasted all this time? What have you been doing with your life? And they're going to assume things about you that may or may not be true, but that's the image that you're projecting to of yourself to somebody that doesn't know you. And they're going to assume that you might be lazy, or that you might be unmotivated, or that you might be, even dumb, right? They're going to assume those things because you haven't built anything for yourself by your mid 30s. So don't let that be you, right? So if you're in your 20s right now, hear this. You don't need to have it all figured out by the time you're 30, okay? But, big but, in your 20s, you need to learn a skill. You need to protect your health, okay? You need to be really careful who you tie your life up with, because if you get involved with the wrong people at 20, especially, if you get involved, say, with the wrong woman or the wrong man if you're a woman, or just the wrong friend group, that can follow you for the rest of your life. One bad decision, one bad night can follow you for the rest of your life. Okay? Don't get yourself in a lot of debt in your 20s. Some debt is good debt, some debt is bad debt. Learn to tell the difference. Okay? Learn to tell the difference, and never take out unnecessary debt, and never take out more debt than you can pay back in a year or two. Okay? Don't numb yourself with distractions in your 20s. That's a good one too. Don't numb yourself with distractions, right? Don't waste all day and all night playing video games that aren't going to get you anywhere. Don't sit around the house smoking pot all day. Don't drink all the time. Don't do things that aren't going to get you anywhere. It's okay to have hobbies, and you should have hobbies. I mean, that's the spice of life, right? You don't want to just, all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy, as they say. And that's true. You will burn yourself out if you don't have some time to enjoy your life. I mean, why else are we here if not to enjoy the fruits of our labor? But don't let that be your everything, okay? You need to spend more time working than playing. That's just the reality of it. Okay? Don't wait for motivation to come to you. You need to build motivation through expertise, right? If you get good at something and you build the habit of doing something daily, you will become motivated at it as you see yourself progressing and becoming better and developing understanding. The motivation will come after the fact. Okay? It's okay to start small in your 20s, but you need to start, and you need to be consistent. Consistency equals compound. Okay? If you are consistent, you will compound on yourself. But if you're inconsistent, that's okay for a little while you're trying to figure stuff out in your early 20s. But by the time you're, say, 26, you really need to have at least some kind of idea of the direction you're going in life. Because what you don't want is, again, to turn 30 with no real direction, no clue what you're trying to do in life, and no real experience or no real resume built, nothing to show for your 20s. Okay, that's not what you want. Okay, so if you're 30 plus right now and you feel behind, know this as well. You're not done. You're not too old. You're not disqualified. But you do need to get serious about something now. Okay? Because 40 is going to come faster for you than 30 did. I promise you. I'm already halfway through my 30s, and it feels like I turned 30 yesterday. Okay? The biggest mistake that I could make right now in life would be spending my 30s the same way I spent my 20s. Okay, that'd be the biggest mistake I could make. The decade of your life from 30 to 40 goes by in a blink of an eye. It really does. Your 20s feels that 10-year span from 20 to 30, that feels like a long time. And compared to 30 to 40, it kind of is, because just the way that you process time as you get older is faster and faster. And it really does feel like I just turned 30 yesterday, and here I am, 10 days out from 35, right? And only now am I really just starting to get my life together. And if I had done the things that I'm telling you to do 10 years ago, I would be a huge success by now. My life would be 10 times better by now. But the thing is that I didn't. And that's okay. But it didn't have to be this hard. It didn't have to be this time consuming. It didn't have to be this slow, okay? If you make the right decisions in your 20s, your 30s will be the best decade of your life. If you make the wrong decisions in your 20s, your 30s are going to be the hardest decade of your life. The choice is yours, okay? You can take what I'm telling you here today, and you can apply this to your own life, and you can get serious about making that change and about getting serious about something while there's still plenty of time to do it. Or you can party your 30s away you can party your 20s away like I did, and then pay for it, double time in your 30s. Okay? I can't change what was done in my 20s. But if you're someone in your 20s now, you've got 10 years ahead of you to figure it out. You've got 10 years ahead of you to make all the mistakes and to learn from what I'm telling you now. Okay? I can't change my 20s. But if I'm someone right now who's listening to this that's in my 30s, what I can control is today, right now. I can control what I do moving forward. I can control the habits that I begin to set for myself. I can change the direction of my life. You are not done in your 30s. But by the time you're 40, it's going to be a lot tougher. If you don't have something figured out by the time you're 40, and at least say 3 years of something, really more, you really need about 5 years by the time you're 40. But if you don't have bare minimum about 3 years of consistency in something by the time you're 40, it's going to be bad news for you. I hate to break it to you, but it's going to be a tough life. Okay, so you can control today. It's never too late, but there is an optimal time to start, and that time's in your 20s. Okay, maybe this video helps somebody out there make one better decision today for their life. Maybe not 10, maybe not a complete life overhaul, but just one. But because small, consistent choices is what's going to compound onto themselves to provide you with the life you want. That's what's going to build the life that I wish I had for me in my 30s, instead of having to build that life for myself in my 30s so I don't end up having a rough go in my 40s and beyond, right? Don't waste this decade of your life. Your 20s is the most, maybe it's not the most important decade of your life, but it might be. It really might be. Your 20s really is the most impactful decade of your life, in my opinion, because that decade is what's going to determine the next 30 years of your life. The way that you spend your 20s will determine the next 30 years of your life. So don't waste it, okay? Don't waste it. Don't panic, but don't waste it, okay? 35 feels a lot different than 25. At 30, you don't want to still say to yourself, I'm still figuring this out. Okay, because at 35, you're going to realize that you're not young and figuring it out anymore. You're a grown adult, fully. And the life that you have right now is going to largely be the result of choices you made in your 20s. Period. And that realization is sobering. And, this video isn't about regrets. It's about awareness, right? It's about wishing that I'd understood what I know now earlier, and hoping that I can pass that on to you so you can avoid a lot of the same mistakes that I made. Okay? Your 20s count. They really count. And if you spend your 20s wisely, you will have a much better life moving forward. Okay? So that's my rant, and I'll see you next time.
Loser, loser.